January 13th, 1982. Washington National Airport stands buried under heavy snowfall and freezing winds. Air Florida Flight 90 prepares for departure, unaware that subtle warning signs will soon turn a routine flight into tragedy. January 13th, 1982. Washington National Airport stands frozen under relentless snowfall and bitter winter winds. Ice slowly builds along the aircraft wings, while ground crews struggle against freezing temperatures and blowing snow. Passengers wait patiently inside the terminal, unaware that weather conditions will soon challenge critical flight decisions.
None of the passengers expressed concern at that point about the weather. People were concerned about delays as far as their schedules went, but at that point, I didn't hear anyone that was frightened or anything.
Inside the cockpit, pilots review departure procedures while snow continues falling beyond the windshield. Severe winter delays have already disrupted schedules, creating pressure to depart before worsening conditions. The aircraft undergoes de-icing treatment intended to remove accumulated snow and prevent dangerous wing contamination. However, extended waiting time allows fresh snow and ice to begin forming once again. Engine instruments display unusual readings, yet the crew continues preparing for departure clearance. While taxiing the crew positions behind another jet attempting to benefit from its exhaust heat. Moments later, the aircraft lines up on the runway ready to attempt takeoff. The captain advances the throttles forward as snow continues drifting across the runway in freezing silence. Acceleration begins, but engine thrust appears lower than expected under the severe icing conditions. The first officer quietly questions the engine readings, noting something does not appear normal. Despite the concern, the takeoff roll continues as runway distance steadily decreases ahead. The aircraft struggles to build sufficient speed while snow and slush reduce aerodynamic efficiency. Airspeed increases gradually, yet remains slightly below expected performance calculations for departure. With limited runway remaining, the crew commits fully to liftoff without rejecting the takeoff. The Boeing 737 finally becomes airborne, climbing slowly into the gray winter sky. Almost immediately, the aircraft struggles to gain altitude as lift remains critically insufficient. Inside the cockpit, subtle warnings begin indicating the aircraft is losing essential aerodynamic performance.
When the pilot finally came on the intercom and said flight attendants be seated for departure, I was really glad to be going. When we started down the runway, it seemed very routine.
The aircraft climbs only a few hundred feet while struggling against heavy icing and reduced engine performance. Airspeed begins decreasing unexpectedly despite maximum thrust being applied by the flight crew. The captain maintains nose-up input, attempting to keep the aircraft climbing. Ice contamination on the wings severely reduces lift and increases aerodynamic drag dramatically. The climb rate continues deteriorating as the aircraft approaches the Potomac River corridor. Critical stall warnings begin activating, signaling dangerously low airspeed and compromised lift. The first officer voices concern as altitude and airspeed continue decreasing simultaneously. The aircraft can no longer sustain controlled climb and begins descending steadily. At extremely low altitude, obstacles ahead leave virtually no margin for recovery. Seconds later, the aircraft impacts the bridge before descending into the icy river.
Traffic was not moving. It was just crawling, going very slow.
Call.
Eagle's Nest.
Says, I think we're looking for, he says, I know we're looking for a 737. And I almost dropped the phone. I said, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Emergency responders rush toward the bridge as stunned witnesses process what just happened. Rescue teams navigate freezing waters, searching urgently for survivors among wreckage and debris. A rescue helicopter hovers overhead, lowering lines toward passengers struggling in icy water. Bystanders on the bridge assist authorities, demonstrating remarkable courage during chaotic moments. Several survivors are pulled from the freezing river, suffering severe hypothermia. The freezing conditions significantly complicate rescue operations and reduce survival time.
And then swim out to the plane. I was overcome by the fact that these people out there in the water were helpless, they were frightened, they were hurt, and they needed help very, very badly. I guess it was just this overwhelming desire to try and do something as opposed to doing nothing, which I just couldn't live with.
Investigators later reconstruct the brief flight path from runway to impact point. Cockpit recordings reveal early concern about abnormal engine instrument readings. The investigation determines engine anti-ice systems were not fully utilized. Ice accumulation on wings dramatically reduced lift during critical takeoff phase.
I knew the water would be cold. I wasn't prepared for exactly how cold it was. It was almost like being electrified. It was just so immediate, and the shock of hitting that cold water. I thought at first maybe I could walk on the bottom of the river in between the ice chunks. But unfortunately, the minute you left the shore, the water was very deep, so there was no walking. The only thing I was focused on was getting out to the plane. I mean, focused to the point where I realized that my hands were so cold I couldn't feel them anymore, and I remember going through my mind, I wonder if I'll ever be able to use my hands again. And just thinking, well, that doesn't matter, I gotta keep going. At about that point, this rope thing that I had tied onto me, they had reached the end of it. And they told me to wait until they tied some more stuff on. And I was pretty cold. I didn't want to wait, but I didn't have any choice at that point. I tried to untie it and get away from that rope, but my hands were too frozen. I couldn't untie it, so I was locked into that, and I just had to wait for them to extend this rope.
National Transportation Safety Board investigators arrive quickly to begin documenting environmental and operational evidence. Runway contamination levels are analyzed to determine their impact on acceleration performance. Experts recreate icing conditions to understand how lift degradation occurred during takeoff. Flight data reveals engine pressure ratios were significantly lower than required levels. Reduced thrust combined with wing contamination created an extremely dangerous aerodynamic situation. Cockpit recordings indicate the first officer questioned performance before liftoff began. Despite uncertainty, the takeoff decision was not reconsidered before runway commitment. Extended ground delay allowed fresh ice accumulation beyond safe holdover time. Investigators confirm engine anti-ice systems were not activated properly. The final report concludes multiple preventable factors aligned during departure.
I had like 67 stitches in my head. The doctor told my mother that if it would have been 2 inches deeper, I would have died, because whatever hit my head, it would have hit my skull and it would have killed me.
Miraculous. Her condition was absolutely miraculous. She had some glass injuries to her scalp and a cut on her ear, but was otherwise doing quite well.
Investigators determined checklist discipline was insufficient under intense operational pressure that afternoon. Winter operations training standards were later scrutinized following findings from this accident. Even thin ice layers can disrupt airflow, causing dramatic lift reduction. Sensor inaccuracies further complicated crew understanding of actual engine performance. Takeoff performance calculations assumed clean wings and proper thrust output. Crew communication hesitations prevented decisive rejection of the takeoff roll. Severe weather created operational stress throughout the entire airport system. Holdover time limitations were not fully appreciated during prolonged ground delay. The official report emphasized preventable human performance breakdown under adverse conditions. The tragedy reshaped how airlines approach winter departure risk management. Following the accident, airlines intensified winter operations training programs across the United States. Greater emphasis was placed on correct activation of engine anti-ice systems during freezing departures. De-icing holdover time charts became mandatory references before every contaminated runway departure. Crew resource management principles were reinforced to encourage assertive communication between pilots. Pilots received additional simulator practice focused specifically on winter-rejected takeoff scenarios. Visual wing inspections were strengthened before departure during active snowfall conditions. Airlines improved coordination between dispatchers and flight crews during severe weather operations. Performance calculations now include stricter verification when contamination risks exist on aircraft surfaces. Engineering teams reviewed how engine inlet icing could reduce available thrust significantly. The lessons from this accident continue influencing aviation safety decades later. News outlets across the region reported worsening winter weather throughout the afternoon. Air traffic controllers managed departures carefully amid reduced visibility and icy runway surfaces. Data comparisons revealed the aircraft never achieved expected climb performance margins. Instrument cross-checking became a central focus during investigative analysis of cockpit procedures. The aircraft reached a critical aerodynamic state shortly after liftoff. Operational manuals were revised to emphasize immediate rejection under questionable thrust conditions. Pre-departure briefings now include explicit discussion of icing hazards and mitigation steps. Aerodynamic research confirmed even minimal contamination significantly reduces lift generation. The rescue effort demonstrated extraordinary bravery under extreme winter conditions. Air Florida Flight 90 remains a solemn reminder of winter aviation risks. Continuous snowfall forced repeated runway clearing operations throughout the afternoon departure schedule. Engine anti-ice activation procedures were clearly listed within standard operating checklists. Subtle instrument discrepancies required decisive interpretation under rapidly changing conditions. Acceleration appeared slower than normal, despite throttles being advanced fully forward. Radar analysis later confirmed the aircraft gained minimal altitude after liftoff. Clear abort criteria are essential when performance indications appear abnormal. Reduced thrust and contaminated wings created a severely unbalanced performance equation. The surrounding city remained unaware of unfolding events above the river. Investigators methodically examined operational decisions made during each departure phase. Their findings reshaped winter departure policies for airlines nationwide permanently. Aviation instructors now emphasize how quickly thin ice destroys critical lift margins during takeoff. Airflow separation begins earlier when wing surfaces are contaminated by frozen precipitation. Engine inlet icing can significantly reduce thrust without obvious external warning signs. Modern cockpit culture encourages assertive communication whenever safety concerns arise immediately. Immediate rejection remains safest option when performance indications remain questionable. And strict holdover monitoring prevents unnoticed ice accumulation during extended ground delays. Dispatch coordination ensures crews understand evolving meteorological threats before departure. Operational pressure can subtly influence decisions even among experienced flight crews. Performance margins shrink rapidly when multiple small risk factors combine simultaneously. Today, safer winter departures reflect hard lessons learned from that afternoon. Every winter, departure now begins with deliberate discussion about contamination risk and engine performance reliability. Performance software incorporates conservative safety margins during adverse weather operations today. Pilots verify anti-ice activation before advancing throttles in freezing conditions. Ground crews perform tactile inspections, ensuring no frozen contamination remains present. Modern crews are trained to question any abnormal indication without hesitation. Training scenarios frequently replicate degraded climb performance during icy departures. Research continues refining understanding of contamination effects on wing aerodynamics. Controllers carefully sequence departures to minimize runway congestion during storms. The memory of that storm remains embedded within aviation safety culture. Air Florida Flight 90 stands as a solemn winter aviation lesson. Captains now explicitly address icing threats before every winter departure briefing begins. Contaminated wings reach aerodynamic stall at significantly lower angles of attack. Engine anti-ice systems protect internal airflow during heavy snowfall conditions. Assertive communication training empowers first officers to challenge unsafe decisions confidently. Acceleration monitoring ensures expected thrust levels are achieved before commitment. Holdover awareness prevents unnoticed recontamination during prolonged taxi delays. Dispatchers provide real-time weather assessments supporting flight crew decisions. De-icing procedures follow strict timing protocols during active precipitation. The severe storm created operational stress beyond normal winter expectations. Lessons from this accident continue guiding safer winter aviation practices. Air Florida Flight 90 is studied extensively during advanced winter operations seminars worldwide. Even microscopic surface roughness can dramatically alter airflow stability during takeoff. Checklist verification now includes explicit confirmation of anti-ice activation status. Simulator instructors emphasize abort decisions when performance expectations are unmet. Improved coordination reduces operational pressure during high workload weather events. Rejecting takeoff early preserves valuable runway distance for controlled stopping. Wind tunnel studies confirm contamination drastically reduces maximum lift capability. Accurate forecasting supports safer decision-making before winter departures. The tragedy strengthened national awareness regarding winter aviation hazards. Its legacy continues, shaping procedures designed to prevent similar accidents. This accident remains a foundational case study in structured winter risk management training programs. Aerodynamic boundary layers detach sooner when even minimal ice disrupts smooth airflow. Cross-verification between pilots prevents overlooked procedural deviations during critical phases. Early decisive rejection protects passengers when acceleration performance appears abnormal. Proper anti-ice usage ensures consistent thrust generation during freezing precipitation events. Strict timing awareness prevents contamination beyond certified de-icing protection limits. Collaborative decision-making strengthens operational resilience under extreme weather stress. Performance testing confirmed dramatic lift degradation from seemingly insignificant ice layers. The severe 1982 storm permanently altered winter departure awareness nationwide. Air Florida Flight 90 remains a solemn reminder of disciplined winter aviation practice. Today, crews analyze winter performance data carefully before committing to any departure attempt. Stall onset occurs earlier when surface contamination alters smooth airflow characteristics. Engine inlet heating prevents ice accumulation that could reduce available thrust output. Assertive cockpit dialogue ensures safety concerns are addressed without hesitation. Acceleration checkpoints confirm adequate thrust before reaching irreversible decision speed. While strict monitoring prevents unnoticed recontamination during prolonged taxi delays. Operational coordination minimizes external pressure during adverse weather departures. Testing repeatedly demonstrates dramatic lift reduction from minor surface icing. The 1982 storm reshaped national winter aviation safety standards permanently. Its legacy continues, guiding disciplined winter departure decision-making today. Air Florida Flight 90 remains permanently embedded within structured winter safety education programs worldwide. Even light frost accumulation can significantly distort aerodynamic lift production during departure. Modern crews verbally confirm anti-ice activation before advancing throttles. Decision speed discipline ensures safe stopping remains possible if anomalies appear. Thrust verification protects against unnoticed performance degradation during freezing precipitation. Holdover awareness prevents contamination beyond certified protection time limits. Collaborative planning reduces operational stress during complex winter departures. Contaminated wings stall earlier and with significantly reduced lift margins. The 1982 accident permanently strengthened winter aviation awareness nationwide. Its lessons continue shaping disciplined winter aviation decision-making today, Comprehensive winter briefings now address contamination risks before every single departure attempt. Even subtle surface roughness dramatically alters lift generation during takeoff rotation. Checklist cross-verification reduces procedural oversights under stressful weather conditions. Acceleration monitoring ensures expected thrust levels before passing critical decision speed. Thrust degradation during icing can remain deceptively difficult to recognize. Prolonged taxi delays increase risk of unnoticed wing recontamination. Dispatch coordination strengthens informed decision-making before departure clearance. Testing confirms contamination dramatically lowers maximum achievable lift capability. The 1982 tragedy permanently transformed winter aviation safety culture. Its lessons continue guiding disciplined winter flight operations worldwide today. Winter departure discipline now demands careful verification of thrust performance and wing cleanliness before advancing throttles forward. Contaminated wings reach stall margins far sooner than pilots may initially expect during rotation. Proper anti-ice activation protects engine performance during heavy freezing precipitation events. Modern cockpit culture encourages immediate challenge when safety margins appear compromised. A decisive rejection remains safest response when acceleration performance appears insufficient. Strict holdover awareness prevents unnoticed contamination during prolonged ground delays. Collaborative decision-making reduces operational pressure during complex winter departures. Research consistently demonstrates dramatic lift reduction from minimal surface icing contamination. The 1982 accident permanently strengthened winter aviation safety awareness worldwide. Air Florida Flight 90 remains a solemn reminder of disciplined winter aviation decision-making.